Hello, and welcome to the vocabulary lesson for the conversation Visit to San Francisco Part 1. So this conversation actually has two parts. This is the first part. In this conversation, I'm speaking with Joe about a friend of mine who came to visit us in San Francisco. And Joe and I are just talking about the things that we did when she was here visiting us. Okay, let's begin with the conversation. I start off by saying, hey, and I'm just saying this to get Joe's attention. And I go on to say, I just got an email from Katie. Now, just here means a short time ago. And Joe says, oh. And oh is just a filler word. It's not really needed in this sentence. And Joe goes on to say, did she make it home okay? So he's asking, did she get home all right? And I say, yeah, she did. Now, yeah is slang or casual or informal for yes. And I go on to say, it was a really nice email. She was thanking us for the 9 days that we put her up when she was here. Now, put her up or put up. This means have someone, or in this conversation, have her, or have someone stay at your home. Put up. For example, when my younger brother and his girlfriend visited San Francisco, I put them up in my apartment for 2 nights. Put up. Okay, going back to the conversation, I go on to say, and also for the great time that we showed her. So I'm saying she's also thanking us for the great time that we all had together. The great time that we showed her. And then Joe says, yeah, I mean, and I mean here is just filler. It's not really needed. And Joe goes on to say, thinking back, we really crammed in a lot. Thinking back, this means remembering. Thinking back. An example of thinking back would be, thinking back to when I lived in Thailand, I have a lot of good memories. Thinking back. Now, when Joe says we really crammed in a lot, crammed in means to do a lot in a short time. Crammed in. For example, when I went to Ireland for 1 week, I crammed in a lot. Crammed in. And then I say, we did. So I'm just agreeing with Joe. And I go on to say, she also said she enjoyed meeting you and getting to know you. She, and is just a filler word here. It's not really needed. And I go on to say, confided in me that you're a keeper. Now, confided in, this means told in secret. Confided in. For example, my brother confided in me that his wife was pregnant. He had not yet told anyone else. Confided in. And when I'm telling Joe that my friend Katie says that he's a keeper, what that means is, or specifically here, it means someone good to continue dating. A keeper. And then Joe just laughs and says, oh, that's nice. Good. And then I laugh. And then Joe says, yeah, I like, and like is just a filler word here. It's not really needed in the sentence. And Joe goes on to say, you know, and you know is short for you know. And Joe says, it was cool the way she pretty much just was able to go with the flow. Pretty much meaning the way she was really able to go with the flow. When Joe says pretty much just was able to go with the flow, just is just a filler word. It's not really needed. And when Joe says it was cool the way she was able to go with the flow, what he's saying is it was good. Cool. Cool means here good. For example, my brother used to think that driving cars fast was cool. And when Joe said go with the flow means to do without planning. Go with the flow. An example of go with the flow would be, whenever I travel, I like to just go with the flow. I do not make many plans. Go with the flow. And then Joe goes on to say, we pick her up at the airport. I knew that she was really tired because she had said that she had to get up really early in the morning to catch her flight. And that she really only slept a few hours. Few here means more than 2, but not very many. Usually it means 3 to 4. So she only slept a few hours, maybe 3 to 4 hours. When Joe says catch her flight means to board or get on an airplane. Catch her flight. For example, Sally was in a hurry to catch her flight. She did not want the plane to leave without her. Catch her flight. And then I say right, and I'm just agreeing with Joe. And then Joe says so, and so is just a filler word here. It's not really needed. And he goes on to say right after, or he's saying soon after, we pick her up. Pick her up, this means soon after we met and gave her a ride. Pick her up, met and gave her a ride. For example, I had a friend coming to visit in Thailand. I had to be at the airport at 1:30 in the afternoon to pick her up. Pick her up. And Joe goes on to say, we go out and grab a bite to eat. Grab a bite. This means to eat some food. Grab a bite. For example, we grabbed a bite to eat before we went to the concert. Grabbed a bite or grab a bite. And then Joe goes on to say, and then we came home for, maybe an hour. And here is a filler word. It's not really needed. Joe goes on to say, before you know it, this means before you realized it. Or it means that time went quickly, it went fast. Before you know it. For example, my nephew is getting older. Before you know it, he will be driving a car. Before you know it. So Joe is saying, and before you know it, we're off to see that concert at the Warfield. We're off. This means we are leaving to go somewhere. We're off. For example, 3 months from now, we are off to Africa. We're off. And when Joe says we're off to see that concert at the Warfield, this is a theater. It's the Warfield Theater, a theater in San Francisco where concerts are performed. The Warfield. And then I say, right. Yeah, and so we did that Saturday night. And then Sunday morning, we had to wake up early and go to Bay to Breakers, which she thoroughly enjoyed. Bay to Breakers. This is the name of a running race in San Francisco. Bay to Breakers. And when I say thoroughly enjoyed, thoroughly means completely. She completely enjoyed. For example, I thoroughly cleaned the apartment before I moved in. Thoroughly. And moving along in the conversation, I go on to say, and then that night we went back to the Warfield for the very last show before it closed. Now, when I'm speaking about the Warfield closing, what I'm talking about here is the Warfield closed for about 3 months. Everyone thought it was not ever going to reopen. However, after about 3 months, it did reopen. And then Joe says, yeah, that was really cool. Or he's saying that was very cool that she was able to go to the Warfield because, I mean, that place is a landmark. Landmark. Here, landmark means a building that is important. Landmark. And then Joe says, it's been around, or he's saying it's been open since, the late 1800s. And here it is now that they said they were going to be closing it. Gonna, this is short or slang for going to. Gonna. You won't really see this in written English, but you'll hear it in conversational English. And then Joe goes on to say, there really was no other opportunity, or he's saying there really was no other chance to go and, to see a piece of history. When Joe says to see a piece of history, he's talking about to visit such an old building. And then I say, yeah, just agreeing with Joe. And then Joe says, what'd she have to say about Bay to Breakers? So what he's asking here is, what did she think about Bay to Breakers? And Joe goes on to say, I mean, that's an iconic San Francisco event. Iconic. This means famous or well known. Iconic. And I say, I think she was pretty shocked. Pretty shocked. This means here very surprised. Pretty shocked. For example, I was pretty shocked by the way the movie ended. Pretty shocked. And I go on to say, Bay to Breakers, although, or I'm saying even though, it's a race, you would never be able to tell it. So I'm saying you would not know it. And I say, because it seems like, or I'm saying it seems as though it's just a drunk, costumed fest. Fest is short for festival. So what I'm saying here, a drunk, costumed fest, I'm saying that it seems like a festival where there are a lot of drunk people all wearing costumes. Costumes are like crazy-looking party clothes. And then Joe says, it seems like a party, actually, to me. So he's saying, it seems like a party, really, to me. And I say, it does, just agreeing with him. And then I go on to say, or uncostumed. So what I mean here is people not wearing costumes. And I go on to say, there are so many naked people as well. Naked people, meaning people not wearing any clothes at all. So there are so many naked people as well, or so many naked people also. And then Joe says, yeah, you know what? And I say, so, and Joe says, you know what the mayor said when he ran it last year? Now, mayor, this is the highest government person for a city. When Joe says, do you know what the mayor said when he ran it last year? The mayor of San Francisco really ran the Beta Breakers race last year. And then I say, I know what you're going to say, but go ahead. So I'm saying, I know what you're going to say, but go ahead and tell me anyway. And then Joe says, yeah, he said, I was surprised there weren't more naked people. And then I say, I know, I love that. Or I'm saying, I really like that. And I go on to say that he made. And then Joe says, that was funny. And then I finish by saying, that comment. So I'm saying, I really like that the mayor made that comment, or I really like what the mayor said. And then I say, that was right when I first moved here, and I was like, yes, I've moved to the right place. Or I'm saying, the right place for me to live. I've moved to the right place, or I've moved to a good place for me to live. And then Joe laughs and says, that's great. And then I laugh and I say, but as far as like other things that we did, I think she also really enjoyed getting out of the city. So I'm saying, I think that my friend Katie also had a good time going outside of San Francisco or getting out of the city. And then I go on to say, and is just a filler word here. It's not really needed. And then I say, one day Tim took her to Muir Woods. Muir Woods, this is a place with a lot of beautiful, big, beautiful trees. It's just maybe a 30-minute drive north of San Francisco. Just right across the Golden Gate Bridge. So I'm saying Tim took her to Muir Woods. And I go on to say, so she really had a great time there. And Joe says, oh man. So he's just showing emotion here, thinking about Muir Woods. And then I say, just seeing the redwoods. So I'm saying, Katie, my friend, had a really good time at Muir Woods seeing the redwoods. Redwoods are a kind of tree. Redwood trees, redwoods. For example, there are a lot of redwoods in California. And they're called redwoods because they actually are a little bit red in color. And then Joe says, yeah, it's beautiful up there. So when he says up there, he's speaking about Muir Woods, where the redwood trees are. He's saying up there because Muir Woods is actually north of San Francisco. And then Joe goes on to say, when you go through that area, it's breathtaking. Breathtaking. This means amazing. Breathtaking. For example, the mountains of Nepal are breathtaking. And then Joe says, it makes for a great picture. It makes for a great picture. This means it looks good enough to take a picture of. For example, the mountains of Nepal make for a great picture. And then I say, yeah, agreeing with Joe. And Joe says, the other great thing is, I love the fact that so many people come from all over the world, or he's saying so many people come from around the world to see the big redwoods. It's really something that, you can take for granted living here. Take for granted, this means to not appreciate. Take for granted. For example, people sometimes take their health for granted. They eat badly and do not exercise. Take for granted. And then Joe goes on to say, but is a filler word, it's not really needed here. And he goes on to say, then when you see all the people who come from, far and wide, this means from everywhere. far and wide. For example, people come from far and wide to see the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. Far and wide. So Joe's saying people come from far and wide just to, come to see him. This is short for them. And then Joe goes on to say, you really see how much of an appreciation or how much of a liking you should have for them. And then I say, oh, yeah. Yeah, and then Joe says, some of those things you can't even put your arms around. They're so big. So what he's speaking about here, when he says some of those things, he's talking about the redwood trees. Some of them just get really, really big. And then I say, I know. And Joe says, you can step inside some of the trees. I mean, it's crazy, When he says you can step inside some of the trees, you really can do this in some of the redwood trees because they have big open spaces at the bottom. And when he says, it's crazy, it's crazy. Here it means unbelievable. It's crazy. For example, I can't believe that Colby failed his driving test. It's crazy. He's such a good driver. And then I say, yeah. And then, remember that other day, too. Or I'm saying, remember that other day also. He drove, and I'm talking about Tim, our friend. He drove she and I, so Tim drove me and my friend Katie. He drove she and I down Highway 1. Highway 1, this is a main road going north and south out of San Francisco. And I'm saying he drove down Highway 1 because we actually went south from San Francisco. And I go on to say, that's always nice to drive along the coast. Or I'm saying that's always nice to drive next to the ocean. And then I go on to say, it's a really pretty drive. And Joe says, oh yeah, and you can stop and go to the beach. Man. And here he's just showing emotion. And he goes on to say, San Francisco, we have the beach, we have mountains, we have the trees. We have the best of both worlds here. The best of both worlds. This means having two great things that are different. The best of both worlds. For example, California has beaches and mountains. It truly has the best of both worlds. And then I say, I know. My brother commented on that when he visited here. And Joe says, yeah, agreeing with me. Now this is the end of the vocabulary lesson for the conversation Visit to San Francisco Part 1. So if you feel you need to, go back and listen to the vocabulary lesson as many times until you have a basic understanding of the vocabulary words. And then when you feel ready, go on to the mini story. All right. See you for Visit to San Francisco Part 2. Bye-bye. Hi, this is Kristen Dodds.
And this is Joe Weiss. And we just wanted to let you know that this material has been copyrighted in the year 2008 by Learn Real English, LLC. www.learnrealenglish.com